There is Pope Francis this morning in a prayer service in St. Peter's Square, start of this holiday season. And it comes on the heels of a remarkable document he released this week. We're here with the roundtable to discuss that. I want to read some excerpts of it first, though. It's called The Joy of the Gospel. It talks a lot about our duty to the poor, and he comes out against what he calls the globalization of indifference. Says, thou shalt say thou shalt not to an economy of exclusion and inequality. Such an economy kills. How can it be that it is not a news item when an elderly homeless person dies of exposure, but it is news when the stock market loses 2 points? Takes on trickle-down theory. Says it has never been confirmed by the facts and expresses a crude and naive trust in the goodness of those wielding economic power. And finally then goes directly into political debates. He says, I beg the Lord to grant us more politicians who are genuinely disturbed by the state of society, the people, the lives of the poor. It is vital that government leaders and financial leaders take heed and broaden their horizons, working to ensure that all citizens have dignified work, education, and health care. Peggy Noonan, in some ways, a summary of all the things we've been seeing from the Pope in the last several months. And he didn't necessarily change church doctrine, but kind of reordered its priorities.
Well, each pope, in the way he speaks about the problems of the world, shows the world his own thinking and his own sense of priorities. This pope, first of all, he continues to fascinate. He excites the imagination of the world. I've never had so many friends of various sorts and backgrounds in this city and in Washington say, I love this man so much, I'm considering becoming Catholic. Have you heard that, people? I'm actually hearing it from people. They're like, wow, could I join? There's many different ways to approach the Pope's paper, which is long and which dealt with many things. One of the thoughts I had briefly was this. Our modern popes have tended to be European social democrats. Socialism is not something that has upset them. Communism has. They grew up in a certain world, and they grew to understand the economic ways and practices and traditions of the West, the free place, which was very helpful to them as the cardinals who became popes, resisted the communist world. Now we have a new pope, Francis from Argentina. His tradition is different. He may indeed view capitalism with a more jaundiced eye. Certainly he views it in a way of critiquing it that previous popes have, but he may be bringing something else which will be revealed in time. We will figure that out in time.
He seems to be wanting to take some of the heat out of the political debates here in the United States as well. I was struck also, Keith Ellison, by he seemed to suggest that bishops should not be denying communion to politicians who support abortion, which has been a big controversy here in the United States.
Well, so much of the gospel of Holy Scripture is about our duty to the poor, the key issues that animate people's lives every day. Can I make enough money to put food on the table? You know, you hear people say, I can't survive on $7.25 as they are standing outside protesting a McDonald's or a Walmart or you name it. And he's speaking to their reality. And it's so thrilling to hear a faith leader of any faith, Muslim, Christian, any Jewish, talk about the real guts of their values in a way that actually should inform policy.
And Congressman, I wonder if we're seeing, you see some of this on both the left and the right, more generally, a real populist energy.
Well, here are Keith and I in the Muslim Methodist corner. We're big fans of the Pope. Who could not like a Pope that talks about people being sourpusses? I mean, I love this. And I think this is a very helpful message in terms of what our obligations are as individuals. On the other hand, I'm also an Adam Smith Wealth of Nations guy, and I look at capitalism as something that has generated more wealth and changed more lives for the better than any other economic system. But that doesn't mean that there's not a place in it to regulate it. That doesn't mean that there's not a humanity that needs to operate within it. And I think the Pope's reminded of that. So I don't see this as an attack on the existing system, but I see it as a very useful corrective and a call for us to be better people.
It's rare, too. I mean, every move this Pope has made seems to be the perfect move. It's just rare in today where, everything gets criticized, everything this person has done. And it's
the greatest campaign strategy of our time.
Well, you guys can maybe take some lessons from him about reinvention and inclusion.
Republicans learn. All of the leaders
Look at that with envy. We just have about a minute left. Before we leave, I want to show a little bit of President Obama's interview with Barbara Walters, where he suggested he might stay in Washington after leaving office.
She'll be a sophomore in high school.
So you may want to stay in Washington because of Sasha.
Well,
I don't want to pin you down, but I am.
Let's put it this way. Sasha will have a big vote. Obviously, they've and Michelle have made a lot of sacrifices on behalf of my cockamamie ideas of running for office and things, and so I think that it's good for them.
David Plouffe, the president, maybe being a good father and a good husband right there. Is it realistic that he could be the first president, I think, since Woodrow Wilson to stay in Washington after?
Well, you got to do right by your kids. So I think most presidents want to escape Washington at the end of their second term, but you got to do right by your kids. And by the way, it's a good thing he won re-election because he might have had 6 years in Washington as a former president.
Woodrow Wilson stayed in Washington because he was dreadfully ill. He had had a stroke or a series of strokes, and so he was not well, so he moved a few blocks away from the White House. I think we'd all agree, in general, it is very good when presidents arrive from a real American place, and it's very good when they get their job done to leave and get home and go home to the real American place, as Harry Truman did, as Reagan did.
But I'm really glad that the president did that, because that's a part of him that I think Americans need to see. He is a wonderful father. When he was out in Moore, Oklahoma during the tornadoes, we were driving around, and we were talking about how difficult it is to be president of the United States, and he made the point, you know, the only good thing about my job is I know neither of my daughters will ever get in a car with a drunk driver. But he thinks about that. I found it very endearing. That's part of my life.
You know, George, I love it when the president reveals that he's a regular person. He's in anxiety over some of the issues he's facing right now, and I believe he has the ability and the persistence to push this thing through and to help realize some of the vision that that Pope Francis has talked about.
And we're many years away. 3 more years left, of course, in the White House. Thank you all. It's a great round table.
Thank you.
And come